I used to be racist. I used to be homophobic, transphobic, sexist, misogynistic, ableist. I used to be fatist and body shaming everyone all the time. I used to be terribly toxic and judgmental and pick on people just for the way they looked. Now, I have changed. Thankfully, I am no longer that person anymore. But it took me nearly 50 years to realize that I was not the person I thought I was. And for those wondering, I'm 55. And I believe that society suffers precisely because of that cognitive dissonance that I suffered from all those years, which is essentially the discrepancy between how I perceive myself and the way I came across in the world. In other words, I believe that we all discriminate in some capacity. And so this is why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And I hope that this video will inspire some of you. And so this is my story. I grew up in the 70s and 80s in France. And back then, everyone was racist. Everyone was sexist and homophobic and ableist. And it was just normal, whichever direction we looked at. And so, for instance, I've been called names all my life. People called me chink, ching chong, ching chong, all sort of things like that. People would mimic slanty eyes, Bruce Lee, going whenever they see me. And I'm still laughing at it, even though it has hurt me tremendously. And this is the set of things. We don't realize how things can be hurtful because we normalize everything. Everyone was also sexist and homophobic. If you watch television, there will always be some butt of the jokes in some shows, and there will always be some effeminate men. The example in the UK would be Carry On. And so all my friends would be cracking terribly offensive jokes against gays and women all the time, and it was all normal. Everyone was also transphobic, but back then there was no trans people. There were, however, transvestite people. And so they suffered similar treatment, which is essentially being accepted in entertainment, but in real life being spat at, being ridiculed and being killed or beaten up. And everyone was ableist. And so this is something that most millennials and maybe Gen Z would find it hard to believe. But back then, if you watched TV, even on prime time, the comedians would openly mimic disabled people, just like Donald Trump did when he goes like that. And so people with cerebral palsy would be called spastic. People with autism would be called retard. People with Down syndrome would be called mongoloid or something like that. Everyone in all sections of society would be using that vocabulary and laughing at them, looking down on them. And because I was surrounded by all of that energy, I became it too. I not only laughed at jokes and said jokes that were terribly offensive, but also I had some ideas that were divisive and hateful. I believed, for instance, that Arabs came to France to take advantage of the system and that were all nasty and dangerous. I really believed that. I also believed that Vietnamese were the same, because some Chinese people in my community used to say that. And the irony is that I had a lot of friends who were Arabs and Vietnamese. But this is how tricky the brain, the mind is. And this is the paradox. I may have suffered from discrimination, and yet I was discriminating. And that's because discrimination is selective. This is what allowed me to be racist, even though I had some friends who were belonging to those group of people. And so the example is that some people may have friends that are black and brown, but they're racist towards South Asian people, for instance. Some people may have friends who are black and Chinese, but they don't like brown people. Some people may have a lot of brown friends, but they hate Muslims, and so on and so forth. When it comes to discrimination, it is selective. And so we don't realize that we are discriminating. A lot of people will say, I can't be racist because I've got a black friend or a Chinese friend. And yet, some people may say, I can't be homophobic. I love Elton John, or sort of tropes, because we suffer cognitive dissonance. And that's because we conflate sense of self with behavior. We understand that racism or any type of discrimination habits are bad. So we can't see ourselves as those people. We believe that for me to be a racist, I need to be a member of a Nazi group in Europe or the KKK in America. Otherwise, I can't be. But we actually are racist to others. When we behave in certain ways, when we say certain things, we laugh at certain jokes. And many of us of a certain generation, just like me, we find it difficult to accept because it was so normal back then. But we need to accept that because it was normal back then doesn't mean that it was right. And it's certainly not right now. But that leads us to the reason as to why some people will resist that notion that they may be racist. Because if they accept that they are racist, it implies somehow that their family was racist, their culture was racist, their past, all their memories, everything that they cherish was bad. And because of their ego, they need to protect this, and they can't tolerate this. And also because it takes a certain level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness to be able to separate behavior from sense of identity. And not everyone is on that journey. And so, if that's you, you may be thinking, Didi talks rubbish, and you may hate everything that I say. And if you do, I get it. I totally understand. I used to be like you. I used to hate on people. I used to discriminate. I used to laugh at jokes that would be at the expense of some minorities all the time. But then one day, I changed. And I realized that my need to entertain this belief was born from hurt. And so basically, I understand that you hurt. I understand that we not only don't choose our upbringing, our belief system, or our trauma, but also we don't choose the state we are now. If you suffer from anxiety, from overwhelm, from discomfort, from living in an environment where everyone has got a narrative rhetoric about the others, the immigrants, the trans people, the wokes, then you are going to experience a different reality to other people because your perception of the world will be coming from a place of survival. And it's going to be us versus them. And so what I'm trying to say is that I see you. If you disagree with me, I get it. It's not a problem at all. I see your suffering. I still love you somehow. And I hope and I wish for you to maybe change at some point. Now, let's go back to people who are aligned with what I say. And let's explain the evolutionary reason of racism or discrimination. And it's very simple. We discriminate because all communities needed some scapegoat. And so we had some witches to burn at the stake. We also needed the others. And this is all born from some traditions of tribalism and the mentality of us versus them. We need to have an illusion of control. And so all those old systems have been going for as far as humanity has been around. But it's got to change because we can do better than that. There's something called evolution. And one of the most important aspects of it would be for us to embrace the whole of us together. The reason why society is so fragmented and there's so much hurt in the world is because some people believe that they are better than others, and some others believe that they are lesser. And it's all a huge lie and illusion. And so, in other words, we discriminate those that our community or family have chosen to demonize and to deem lesser. But we don't realize this because it is our normality. There's also the fact that some people don't have the awareness that they are privileged and they don't have the discrimination that others suffer from. So there's a lack of empathy here. And they're not necessarily horrible people, but they don't realize the implications of their words and actions. They don't realize that whenever we're allowing jokes that come at the expense of some minorities, it will impact those communities. They don't realize that as long as they allow, let's say, transphobic jokes, for instance, which is very much on trend in the last decade. And I can think about people like Ricky Gervais or Dave Chappelle. And they're saying, freedom of speech, it's just a joke. Don't be so woke. They don't realize that when they are promoting and allowing those sort of jokes, they're also allowing for society to be cruel and horrible to the trans community. And they don't realize that some people literally die and get killed because of that. They don't realize that many people suffer from major mental and emotional illnesses because of that, and their lives as well. And they don't realize this because they're seeing things from their perspective, from their ego's perspective, defending their sense of self, not aware of how impactful and harmful what they say is to others. I'm realizing that my stomach is making a lot of noise, and I hope that is not creating too much disruption. I'm trying to fast and work at the same time, and I don't feel hungry, but this is happening. And so, let's put this together. There is a discrepancy between how we perceive ourselves and how others are perceiving us. And there's also a disconnection between what we think our words and actions do and how we are really impacting the world. Now, let's go back to my story. I didn't see myself as a racist until one day, as I went through my own journey of healing and dealing with my past and my trauma. I came to a point of self-awareness that allowed me to hear my own thoughts and to realize that I sounded like my bullies. It was an epiphany, and I can remember exactly when it was. It was in 2018. I realized that I was like my bullies, despite everything that I thought I was. And so I started to address all of my habits and change all of them one by one. And by this, I mean, I used to still laugh at jokes that were derogatory to some communities. But then, that's because I understood that it's my program, so I laughed. After that, however, I asked myself, do I still want to keep on laughing at those jokes? Do I still want to promote that sort of society, that sort of normality? No. And so eventually, over time, I was able to no longer accept this as something that would entertain me and make me laugh. Of course, I have changed all of my belief in regards to other groups of people. That was easy to do. But I think the hardest thing to change is really our habits of reactions, or habits of humor. Those things, we don't think them through enough. But we have to. Because as long as we are still laughing at those seemingly harmless jokes, we are still promoting an unfair society. And the moment we have that awareness, we are automatically implicated. We can either be the change or the problem. So this is what happened to me. And I believe that we can all work on this. And so I can quote now a very famous quote by Albert Einstein that goes like this. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, to raise an awareness of our own behavior. Most of us, we don't understand or realize the mechanics of the mind. I didn't, up till not so long ago. And so once we realize this, we can change, and we should change. Now, key points. Racism or any other systems of discrimination is not about how we perceive ourselves. It is about how people perceive us based on our behavior. And so we don't get to choose whether we are racist or not. People tell us through our behavior whether we are or not. Next point, no one is perfect. We don't choose our upbringing. We are the product of our environment. And we all hurt in some ways, and we all deal with hurt in different ways. However, it doesn't have to be at the expense of others. And so there are two things we can change. The first thing is to raise some self-awareness, which is the main topic of this video today, which is why I'm telling you my story. We're all human, and it's part of our human experience to realize some of the things that we may want to upgrade as we go through that journey. But we can also learn how to raise compassion for those who come across as racist or transphobic or body shaming or any of those. They're not bad people out of choice. They behave like that because that's all that they know. They genuinely believe that they are right. And they also hurt. Remember that only hurt people hurt people. And so, of course, we need to keep ourselves safe from people who may be hating on us because they have some prejudice against us. But there's a place and a time for everything. So on one hand, there's a place and a time to fight against inequity and injustice. And there's a place and a time to understand the people who suffer from it, from the bigotry and being hateful. And The beautiful thing about this is that the more we understand, the better we will be at fighting inequity and injustice and make this world a better place for all. And this is how we change the world. One person at a time, starting with ourselves. And so I hope that this was interesting or even insightful to some of you. Please do share to anyone you believe could benefit from that video. And also, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. Know that I go live twice a week, every Wednesdays and Fridays from 6 p.m. UK time until 8 p.m. And it's going to be ongoing for the foreseeable future. We're in October 2035 now. That's it. I'm going to wish you a great day or night wherever you are. And remember to be kind to others if you can. If you can't, at least be kind to yourself. Okay, bye.